Привет, I'm Chuck Olenek, a Ukrainian-American, baptized with the name Yaroslav, which is the name I use in the Society for Creative Anachronism. And it's May Day, May 1st, the birthday of the Society. So, Happy New Year, Anno Societatis 61. So, it's also a European festival of ancient origins, beginning the marking of the beginning of summer, usually celebrated May 1st in the northern hemisphere, because this is like halfway between the vernal equinox, spring equinox, and the summer solstice, right, that midway point, one of those crossroads festivals. And there's traditions all over Europe, including gathering green branches and wildflowers, bringing in the May, and those are used to decorate buildings and made into wreaths, and you get into the idea of, selecting or crowning a May queen, maybe a male companion, decked out in greenery, and setting up a maypole, or a May tree, or May bush. And people are going to dance around it and sing. Okay, we know that stuff. We know about parades and processions involving these things. Bonfires are a big thing in some regions, and the celebrations may be held the night before, known as May Eve. And in the previous video, we talked about that as far as in Central and Eastern Europe, celebrating what's known as Walpurgis Night, which is actually kind of like all over Europe. And we were looking, I think, towards the end at the celebrations in Bohemia, what's now the Czech Republic. So that's a good way to start this in looking at how May Day is celebrated in Central and Eastern Europe. Okay, quick review. If you aren't one of those people that has subscribed to my channel yet, May Day really starts with the Czech version of Walpurgis. They call that Paleni Čarodějník, burning of the witches, or Čarodějníci, the witches, and it had like bonfires 26 feet tall, a witch figure in there. Young people would gather around the bonfires, because hey, that's what people do, and you get black smoke pouring up and people cheer, a witch is flying away, and there's an effigy of a witch that is held up and gets thrown in the bonfire to burn. And it's customary to burn a puppet representing a witch on the bonfire. Okay, that was the Walpurgis review. Now, there's the bonfire stuff I mentioned before, but there's something else which happens, and that's a mica, or a maypole, also gets erected that night. So make that part of the old traditions. Okay, now we get to the May Day stuff. In Bohemia, with May being also a time of spring work, that's continuing in the field and in the garden, there's various rituals that are related to work in the field and garden, which are observed. Okay, greenery gets hung on the houses and on the farm buildings. Maybe it's expressing the wish of everyone for strength and good growth of all vegetation. Well, that can easily evolve into a form of ritual protection, because later that gets extended to doing this stuff, hanging the greenery on the churches. And okay, even though I'm Eastern Orthodox and the predominant religion in Bohemia is not, okay, we do things a bit differently, but I do remember around this time of year greenery being brought into the church. So I can see a connection. Also, I did not feel like really asking questions like, why is there green stuff at the front of the church? Now there's a more modern vibe, putting up a beribboned mica in front of the house of an admired girl, because May Day has become a holiday of love, and May is a month of love. And as the evening of April 30th advances to midnight, it's in Bohemia, and the bonfires are starting to die down, couples go in search of a blossoming tree. The custom, which probably began in the early 20th century, involves young women being kissed past midnight under said blossoming tree. Okay, probably not period, but I do like the concept. Oh, and on May 31st, there's an event called maypole felling, when the maypole gets taken down. In Estonia, it's called Kevadpuha, or Spring Day, and it's basically a continuation of Walpurgis Night, with all sorts of celebration going on. But also in the early hours of May Day, there's a tradition of erecting mayupu, or maypoles. Okay, so now we're going to go over to Bulgaria, which is largely Orthodox. On May Day, Bulgarians celebrate Irmeden. I've also heard it referred to as Snake Day or Zumski Den. And on May 1st, people traditionally observe rituals to chase away snakes and prevent their bite during the summer, which sounds like a direct contradiction to other research where snakes are welcomed around the house. So, in folk belief, snakes were supposed to emerge from winter hibernation on Blagovets, which was March 25th, but the king of the snakes appears May 1st. And in Bulgarian tales, the king of the snakes can bestow wondrous gifts, but snakes can also be dangerous, right? I guess that's why they're trying to chase them away, because they bite. The holiday is associated with the snakes and made in order to protect people from being bit during the summer. And the name of the holiday comes from the prophet Jeremiah, but not the bullfrog, but its origins are most probably pagan. And the Western Bulgarians, they light fires and they jump over them and they make noises to scare the snakes. Okay, jumping over the fires thing, you're going to see that from time to time in different festivals. Another custom is to prepare podnichi. They're special clay pots made for baking bread. Also, this day is especially observed by pregnant women so that their offspring do not catch Jeremiah, an illness due to evil powers. All right, in Hungary, May Day is called St. Philip and Jacob's Day. And you can get into the religious stuff, but there's things going on like the Mayalis, that's a folk festival. All right, so don't need to list all of what's going on in there. It's customary to set up maypoles or maifa or mayusfa in several places in town, and usually set up on May Day or on Pentecost. And sometimes they're just tied to a fence because you work with what you have. Most of the time they're planted in the ground and the trees are carved in secret, so there's actually real work going into this, and erected in secret, and that's usually done in the dead of night, and the aim is always to go out with girls. So evidently a lot of these maypoles, they're like aimed at very specific targets, and the idea is these poles would be defended by, I guess, the buddies of the guy who wants the pole erected in front of the pretty girl's house, and they're gonna make sure that the pole doesn't get taken down by some rival team or some rival group. Also, another May Day custom, girls were, this is from Transylvania. We're really trying not to do vampire stuffs. Okay. from Transylvania, there's a custom for girls to go to the spring or river on this day to wash their faces in the water, and it was believed that the water had magical powers to keep them beautiful and healthy. And other superstitions involve decorating the house with elderberries to ward off witches. But that's also something that I mentioned with the Walpurgis Night. Alright, so let's just take a look at one more Eastern or Central European country, Romania, and how May Day was celebrated there. Now, what's being celebrated is the Armanden, and that's the beginning of summer, okay? Symbolically tied to protection of the crops and the farm animals, and the name comes from Yereminu Dini, and that meant Jeremiah's day, as in the prophet Jeremiah. But the celebration rites and the habits of the day kind of say it's earlier in origin. All right, and a couple of alternate names for the day. Mugwort Day, that's going to become a big thing. All right, and Drunkard's Day. All right, and it's celebrated to ensure good wine in autumn, and also for, the health of people and farm animals alike, and protection from the elements of nature, like all the bad stuff like storms and hail, and pests. And okay, you basically, it's going to be a lot of partying, and it's customary to eat roast lamb and new mutton cheese, and to drink mugwort flavored wine, which I had never heard of before. And apparently if you can't get that, you just go to red wine, and that was supposed to refresh the blood and give you protection from diseases. So for my wine drinking friends out there, see, it's healthy. On the way back from this gathering, men are supposed to wear either a lilac or mugwort flowers on their hats. No, hats, okay. And, you have other customs such as washing their faces with the morning dew for good health, adorning the gates for good luck, and abundance. You basically get the greenery again. Or for the houses that have maiden girls, birch saplings. So I guess we can get into the whole courtship thing there, right? And also the entries to the shelters of the animals get adorned with green branches, and all branches are left in place until the wheat is harvested, and then they're going to use those branches to help feed the fires, to bake the first bread from that wheat that's been harvested. Also, by tradition, country women don't work in the field, all right, because that's bad on that day, and the oxen are given a day off. All right, so which is kind of unfortunate in that combination there, but okay. And there's a bit of folklore that says weather is always good on May Day. So, okay, that's what I've got for May Day in Eastern and Central Europe. And some of it is, a bit more modern, some of it's out of period, but I would imagine some of these customs would be period. Well, until the next time, do pobacenia.